Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, your weekly discussion of motoring news. This is episode 609 on Tuesday, the 26th of November, 2024. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. And this week we'll be finally able to sit back and relax in one car. In new car news, we wonder how many times a brand can be reinvigorated. And in points of interest, we find out what to buy if you like to hang on to your cars. First time in a while, we have some follow-up. And I will start with one that I was saying to Alan earlier. I don't think we gave it the prominence and importance when we covered this a few weeks ago.
I don't think anybody did.
To do with the Court of Appeal's ruling on the Financial Conduct Authority's investigation into car finance, and how the Court of Appeal stated that hidden commissions should not be allowed. These are described as discretionary commission arrangements between lenders and dealerships. That was the investigation. However, it appears that the Court of Appeal has gone wider than that.
Much wider.
This is the car dealer and the lender agree on the car dealer getting a percentage of whatever the finance is as a bonus. What the ruling was about was, have you made that clear to the person signing the contract for the car that that you're getting a portion of this from the lender? That's what they were all about. And the accusation was that some firms had not done that, but the Court of Appeal has gone wider than that, it would appear.
Yes, which has it's just got a massive impact on the entire industry, and that's why you're seeing all these could cost the industry £30 billion type headlines coming from, in case the story I have open is AM Online, and that there may well be class actions, people being able to claim to have that paid back to them, which seems slightly strange.
Martin Lewis, the consumer champion, as he's described in this article, he said, and I'm going to quote here from it because he is much better explaining this stuff than I. He said, the consumer wrongs of the DCA, which was that thing I just described, with a lack of transparency about hidden cost increases and a restriction of consumer choice, are obvious. Yet, mulling the Court of Appeal ruling, I find it more difficult to see the unfairness or that redress is due, where car finance firms with fixed commissions were following the regulator's guidelines. Even he's saying the Court of Appeal appears to have overstepped what the issue was.
Yeah. Obviously, the last times I bought cars has been in the US. I was trying to explain to some of my colleagues the idea of a key facts sheet the other day. If you want to know how difficult and different it is here and why everybody hates car dealers, I was trying to explain the concept of the key facts sheet that comes on the front of all of these documents.
Oh, wow.
Everything financial. Here it doesn't exist. You get 20 pages of a point with all sorts of stuff hidden in it, which you can't necessarily pick out. For those of you who ask me about things that I don't like in the US, there's a prime example. It's the fact that all of these things get hidden. And here we are in the UK with courts declaring that actually, no, things that were previously correct practice now seem to be incorrect practice. But this is being escalated to the Supreme Court, who hopefully will bring a certain level of common sense to this. Otherwise, the entire idea of motor finance in the UK is stuffed. I think this is a tricky one. I think it's going to go on. But yeah, this is definitely one to keep an eye on, folks.
Yep.
Meanwhile, somewhere in France, INEOS, great British company, is psyching up to restart production. As we know, they've been stopped for 4 months because their seat supplier, Recaro, had filed for insolvency. They are now talking about restarting production in January, which is just as well, because now would be a really silly time to restart production. Restart it, then we all go on holiday, which probably signals that Recaro has been saved from bankruptcy, but there's been no announcement from Recaro yet, and INEOS are saying, well, I think it's down to whoever, our seat supplier, to make that appropriate announcement, but we're about to start remaking vehicles again.
Yes.
I think the Recaro bit is actually more news than the INEOS bit, but there we go. I saw one with a red chassis the other day.
Oh, right.
It was very odd.
Anyway, I'm going to take us on to the new news of a car company that's managed to anger some people. And unless you lived under a rock, didn't speak to anyone and have never heard of the internet, and if so, well done for listening to us, you will know that Jaguar has started the reimagining process. And this is very clear that it is a reimagining, it's not a rebranding. And we have many articles and one video linked in the show notes for you to check out, which will run through a host of points that were highlighted in the whole presentation of the information to us, some of the discourse around it, and the reactions thereof on all that. Now, first of all, there is an Autocar article written by Steve Cropley, which just very calmly goes through what Jaguar have done and tries to explain it slightly. There is then also an article linked from Car Dealer, which explains what it was like to be at the secret event that they were all embargoed, and how some of the really quite stunning statements from some of the senior management team, it's just something that is a little bit mad. And then we will get on to an article from Creative Block that tries to explain some of what Jaguar is trying to do. There is a really balanced and calm discussion by Rory Sutherland on the Spectator YouTube channel. He's part of Ogilvy PR company, by the way. I think he heads it up. He sort of knows what he's talking about, shall we say, on this sort of things. And he just runs through what has happened, and he's making it very clear that he doesn't agree with everything they've done, but he is reserving judgment. And he also makes it clear he's a big Jaguar fan of cars from the past. It was really interesting to hear from a professional PR person their take on it. There will then also be an article from Mostly About Driving, where the more technical aspects of the typeface and the branding, graphics and details are run through, and they are explained from the perspective of the technical merits of those, or not in some cases. Then, because we're not finished yet, then there will be a piece linked to written by Alex Goy on Driven, dealing with some of the more unsavory reactions and silliness that engulfed the internet, into particularly car internet. But it wasn't just car internet, it did go mainstream, to be fair to them. And then finally, there is an article from BBC News where Jaguar are quoted saying, "Trust and reserve judgment on the rebrand."
They also said that they didn't care if Nigel Farage didn't like it.
Yes, but I think that last one is one of two bits for me that I'm most disappointed in all of this.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you want to chip in, because I know you've been
Andrew's suffering this discussion, by the way.
Yes,
Andrew's been suffering this discussion. It's not been a discussion yet, but the fact that we're even covering this topic in anything more than 2 minutes. And thank you, mate.
Well, there's plenty of stuff you don't want to hear me talk about, so you know.
Well, there is, yes. Oh, look, another local congestion charging scheme. Oh, what fun! Looking at this, so quick reminder for people: back when I had a proper job, I worked for a very small luxury goods company, and we had this terrible problem in that our stuff was incredibly Scottish, in that it was like sporran flasks and things like that. But we had this awful problem of trying not to be, oh, look, a piper in front of a castle, hoots, type of thing, and trying to keep away from these sorts of stereotypes. We actually had...
You weren't trying to be shortbread tins.
We were absolutely... Well, shortbread tin was the example that we definitely didn't want to go near. So there was so despite the fact that the company had been founded to make bagpipes, you never saw bagpipes anywhere near the thing. Similarly, tartan was also banished into the distance. We did a rebrand at one point. We worked with a chap who's actually a friend of the CEO's, a fantastic guy. He was a chap called Michael Fraser. And we got to the stage where we actually had, we didn't have a word or a sound for it, so this doesn't work very well on a podcast, but we actually had a movement, and it was like, And that was what we were trying to avoid. So it's you kind of swinging your arm around like a pipe major whilst looking like a dork and trying to avoid that. And I think that that's, to an extent, what Jaguar are trying to do. But
for me, the thing obviously, all this is, well, it's a couple of things, right? First thing that got me was I was confused what they were trying to say.
Yeah. I still am. That was my next point, actually.
Yeah, I'm very confused what they were trying to say, and it had nothing to do with the people that were in the video or anything like that, because I couldn't care less, honestly. That doesn't matter. That's just like soft furnishings. That's just, if you got upset about that, then, well, go seek help.
Then you've got other problems. This is nothing to do with
seek professional help, because for goodness sake, just relax a little bit. But I didn't understand what the message was trying to be, apart from the copy nothing. That's the only thing I sort of got. But that was after reading plenty of other articles that explained, oh, yes, this sort of goes back to something that Lyons said, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you completely. If you're upset by that short video, then goodness me, the things your heart must be doing every time there's a perfume advert on television. Because that's all that was. What is surprising to me about this rebrand, there's a couple of things. One is just overwhelmingly how feminine the outcome is. And I'll come on to why that's interesting in a moment, because that's sort of build on that short. But it's, yeah. But then there's other stuff, like they showed that there's a roundel. I mean, let's not even talk about the roundel with the 2 R's in it, because that's just like, it's just not even the right weight, to give a feeling of solidity or something, which is something you would hope that Jaguar would be hoping to pass on and exude in this, given their reputation.
But it was also talked about they want it to weather.
All right.
They want it to weather.
We want it to look crap.
What they've done is it feels like I've been involved in several projects of architecture where things like this happened. Materials got spec'd because it would change over time. And if you're talking about something like a building that you hope will stand for at least 30 years, that's different. That is interesting. It brings, it can, if it's done well, by the way, it can bring some...
And its environment.
Yeah, you can bring a new element as it ages of visual and appreciation. That's great.
People wash their cars more often than their buildings. So they're going to want to do all this. That's just ridiculous.
So much of this feels like it missed, because if I can't work out what you're trying to say, and I'm fully sitting there going, you're not aiming at me, but still I should be able to work out who you are.
One of the best quotes I saw on the internet was someone, and I'm going to paraphrase slightly here, saying, well, having seen the branding, I'm definitely going to consider Jaguar for the next time I'm looking for my feminine intimate pleasure device online. And I think that nailed how it missed. That's what I'm saying about it being overly feminine. The other part of the overly feminine bit, by the way, is of course the first, and let's talk about cars for a second here, is that the first vehicle that this is going to be applied to is going to be a new XJ. A new large luxury saloon car costing over £100,000. That is an industry sector where traditionally the number of female buyers has been as good as zero. Such tiny, tiny figures. I don't even know why, so even from that point of view, and I don't think, and by the way, just because it's a Jaguar, a new luxury saloon is actually going to suddenly magically attract female buyers.
No.
From that point of view, and from what it is that they're trying to do and how they're relaunching the brand, and when it comes to product, then I don't understand how it ties with the product yet either.
But the problem is we don't know what the product is either. We've seen teases.
Just wait, everyone, because if you think this was just been the precursor that was meant to be a small teaser for what's coming out next Monday, 2nd of December, where they will be showing at an art festival in Miami, the new concept car. This new Jaguar concept car. Now, there have been little teaser pictures on Instagram and stuff. The little teaser pics, I'm sure, have been chosen intentionally to look like a piece of industrial design, an air conditioning unit, that kind of thing. And so we're going to have to then see where that goes. I think that this could be in for a second round. The danger is that everybody's tired of it and it gets practically no interest, of course. But we could be in for a second round of all of this at the start of next week and talking about this, a development of this story next week in New Car News.
Mm.
I'm interested. The thing is that this is so weird and bat poo that I am really curious to see where this is going to go next and actually what's going to happen now and what the new vehicles are going to look like and all of that kind of stuff. But the thing is that none of this, there's a word begins with W, ends in K that we use in the design world to discuss this, which Andrew will bleep if I actually use it. But none of this stuff actually matters if the product sucks. Now, the product shouldn't suck. We've definitely got good enough engineers that unless there are management decisions which affect the way that goes, and well, management decisions at JLR.
This is my concern, because if they're going to botch the handling of this, because there's two problems with this. First is people don't know what it's trying to say. Because if you look at the bazillion articles, or particularly if you're on LinkedIn, suddenly everyone's a marketing expert and branding expert.
But that's LinkedIn. It's awful.
Yeah. No. But just bear with me. But because there isn't a clear message coming from this that people understand and can grasp, then they've lost any messaging. They've allowed us all to start speculating, which I think is a huge mistake, massive mistake. And the second one is that, as others have pointed out on social media, they didn't appear prepared for any pushback or for there to be any perceived, not even, and I'm ignoring the woke DEI and all that pushback, not pushback, but just outrage of, like you said,
really
people need to go and get
people
need to go and get help, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about they seemed unprepared for people to turn around and go, what the hell?
Yeah.
And if you are making those two fundamental mistakes, I am really, really worried what the hell the car is.
No, I was told that this was whole handled internally and not via an agency, was the story that I saw.
I saw that as well, which makes me really worried, because it means management have fiddled about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's some lines very much in Jamie Mr. Jalco's story, which does point out that one of the key reasons that brands end up with branding the way the branding is that senior management like that. That's what the senior management like, and so that's what we're going to be doing, whether or not it actually fits or not. One last thing, just quickly, before we round up on this, because we've given this quite a lot of time and everybody's probably sick of it, but I needed to say my thing. And it definitely wasn't worth a whole special edition on the topic like others. There's a sort of round version of the Jaguar thing, and it's got this kind of sweeping brushstroke through the back of it, which puzzles the heck out of me.
You mean the color behind the typeface? Yeah,
it's a bit that looks like a sort of like Kotex, looks like it's from a...
Somebody's got very artistic with the Japanese flag.
But then it's got stripes through it, which just is ridiculous at a time when everybody else is going, we're going to get rid of our gradients because that way then we can illuminate it on a badge.
Well, there's going to be 3 colors. Did you see that?
No, but it also doesn't surprise me. Is it going to be red, white, and blue?
No, red, yellow, and something else. I can't remember what this something else was. And they're all going to have gradients. None of them are going to be flat colors.
But everybody's putting illuminating the badges on stuff. The one color you can't have an illuminated badge on the front of your car is red.
Yeah, but then they're not going to have that. It's just going to be letters, isn't it? That'll be what's lit up, or the roundel.
Oh, it just gets worse, doesn't it? Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Because
we're going to have to go through it all again on Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, which is great. We'll actually talk about the concept. And either everyone will go, meh, which is the worst possible reaction, or all of this stuff is going to be stoked up again.
Yeah. Okay, well, talking of car companies that seem to have been making some odd decisions, do you want to take us to Ford?
Yes. So Ford is looking to implement a major cost-cutting program. They are looking to get rid of 4,000 jobs across Europe, about 800 in the UK, due to concerns about the health, in inverted commas, in this Autocar article, of its passenger car business. This affects both European headquarters, production lines for the Explorer and the Capri, which are also, it says here, will see build numbers reduced. In other words, nobody's buying them.
But why are they not buying something that starts at £46,000, Alan?
It's because, as you put it earlier on, Ford aren't making anything that anybody wants to buy or can afford right at the moment.
Yes. Their cheapest EV is £43,000.
And when your entire stack is based on essentially the Fiesta, which you got rid of 2 years ago, which was not that price and was based on volume, then all of a sudden you have this kind of problem. I mean,
I don't know what they expected to happen, really. Honestly, I don't know what they expect. And from a business and regulatory point of view, I do understand, not that I agree with, but I do understand why things like the Fiesta and the Focus left.
But there should have been something there.
But they didn't replace them with something, though.
Exactly. Even some form of stopgap would be better than the nothing that there is at the moment.
Because it'll be soon. It'll be the next quarter financial results for Ford, where they're going to have to say yet again to investors, oh, our EV division lost another several billion.
Yeah.
They're having to preempt here and say, right, well, this is the work, we're being proactive now, and this is what we're doing.
But they're being thoroughly outclassed by the Koreans.
Yeah.
Thoroughly outclassed. By the way, in case you wonder, well, you're kind of Korean heavy on the special editions there, folks. It's not because we haven't asked Ford, but we're not EV enough for Ford.
No. The podcast that 8 years ago drove around Britain in one of the few electric vehicles available in 6 days is not EV enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth putting that out there if you do want to know from that point of view. It's as if the guy was a plant from Volkswagen. It's as if was it Martin Sander was a plant from Volkswagen, because that's the only conclusion I can come to with what's happening since and what they're trying to now deal with.
But it just feels like so many companies don't understand. Don't get it. Talking of which, I'm going to take us on to Nissan. That's not that they don't understand, it's just they've had no time to try and understand because they've been too busy eating themselves, like we were talking about last week.
Yep.
And Nissan has urged the UK government to weaken the zero-emission vehicle mandate because there is not quite the demand, how are they putting it, a softening in demand for EVs, which has caught everybody a little bit by surprise, which shouldn't have caught anybody by any surprise. However, they do not think they're going to get near the 22% target that they need to by the end of the year.
Nobody's going to get near the thing. And the government's, unless it happens at the 11.5 hour, the government isn't going to do anything about it. If they're prepared to cut the winter fuel subsidy for old people, a classic vote loser, then they're not going to bother with this. It's very difficult to care about this from Islington.
It is not a surprise. It should not be a surprise to anyone.
Speaking of manufacturers stepping away from EVs, Lotus is suddenly embracing extended range electric vehicle hybrids. I mean, that's a range extender in old speak. As it, Autocar is saying it acts as the all-electric plan, which I think is probably a little bit over dramatic.
No, they're just pushing it back a couple of years.
Yeah. They plan to go all electric in 2028, but instead it will be 2030. Challenge, of course, being that luxury car buyers are more reluctant to move and to change.
Is it that they're more reluctant to change and move, or is it that Lotus are not offering something that people want? This is the problem I have with all these car companies that are saying there is a slowdown in and they all in different markets and different segments of the market.
Yeah.
And they all say, oh, there's no demand. You go, no, is there no demand for your product?
I saw someone in China. Okay, let me step this one back a sec. I saw someone in China who does work for Lotus's parent brand, Geely, comment recently that it was funny to see a Bentley plug-in hybrid plugged in and charging in the street. And people said, oh, why is that? And he said, well, if you can afford one of those, then you can afford to run the fully internal combustion engine version. You don't want to be hanging out with the plebs and charging. That was his thing. It actually didn't relate to a Geely car at all. It was a Bentley, and then he was explaining, well, actually, luxury car buyers tend to buy the petrol-powered ones, although they have the choice. there is a little bit of maybe it's not what people want. Maybe it's not that they don't want it. They just don't want to hang about and charge them and deal with that. I think it's interesting. I mean, it's the whole how Lotusy is it? But if it has a range extender, does that not make it easier on the tariffs to go to other countries? Because that's one of the challenges that Lotus has, is the EMEA and the Electra are counted as completely Chinese and therefore whacked by Europe, whacked by the US.
Is EU going to allow hybrids depending on what type of hybrid, or is the EU just purely focused on EVs? Because all the headlines have been EVs, but I've never seen it fully, now you make that point, I've never seen it further explained along the lines of, oh, by the way, if they bring an internal combustion engine, that's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be. I don't think there's ever really been too much of an issue with the internal combustion engine ones because the prices were pretty much on par. The thing is that Lotus is caught in this thing, which is really about low-priced EVs. Undercutting the European ones. And Lotus has this really expensive one. It's like, look at it, it's not our fault. We don't want to sell many. They've been caught in this big thing with basically the French brands selling hatchbacks.
Who knew knee-jerk reactions would have
exactly. And Lotus is like, we don't even want to sell that many there. We just need to bring it in. Don't whack 30% on when all you want to add 30% on something that costs 15,000 euros. 30% onto something that costs 100,000 euros is far more. It's far chunkier, and so that they're caught on the periphery of Stellantis and Renault's push to not have Chinese competition. I think that is part of it. It's just that everything's pushing the prices crazy. Shove an internal combustion engine in there, and all of a sudden things are all right.
Hopefully.
Well, you see, you can't do that on the cheapo.
Next up, I will take us on to Tesla versus Rivian in court. Now, we can't remember whether we ever covered this when it came out back in, I think it was 2020 or 2019 when the first news of it came out. Yeah, it was
too far back for us to think about that, so we just didn't.
Yes, but Tesla took Rivian to court claiming that there was, and I'm quoting here, a quote from the TechCrunch article linked in the show notes, an alarming pattern in which Rivian was recruiting Tesla employees and encouraging them to take proprietary information with them as they left. Rivian said, oh, give over. You're just trying to slow us down.
Yeah.
But they've apparently come to some sort of agreement. We don't know what it is. Nobody's talking to us. Rivian refused to discuss litigation. And obviously, if you try and speak to anyone at Tesla, good luck, because they don't know how to answer the phone ever, and they have no press office anymore.
You've got to do it via X.
Okay, well, yes, good luck with that. It all seemed like it was a big fuss about nothing, but at least it's one thing less on Rivian's plate.
Yes, there's one thing to move on from, whatever way that goes. Meanwhile, still in EV news, goodness, what a surprise. I can't imagine why everyone jumped on the new branding story from Jaguar. Honda has begun demo production of solid-state batteries. It has started a small production line to work out where there might be any bugs in the ideas of mass production, to work out roughly how much it's going to cost to produce them, do all of these sorts of things. So it's very much proof of concept at scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at the same time, they are trying to make a viable solid-state battery, which they can then produce and put in cars. But this is the first story we've heard of someone getting to the point where they go, hang on, hadn't we better work out whether we can do this at scale and what all the implications of that are? If they can be made to work, and it is a huge if, and they can be made viable, the idea is that they will hold more charge. They will be far smaller in terms of the space they need. They will be more energy dense, and therefore you can get longer ranges out of them, and you will be able to, in the ideal world, charge them up akin to going to a fuel pump, now fuel petrol or diesel.
Mm-hmm. Provided the charger can produce enough charge fast enough.
Yes, ideal world.
That's ideal world. Sorry, that's the big caveat on that last one. But yeah, otherwise they should be they're seen to be a win-win-win type situation. So,
they'll also be cheaper as well.
Yes. Well, we'll find that one out.
At some point.
But people are actually testing these theses now, which is a good thing.
Yep.
Last one before Guilt Minute?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with batteries, and this is not good news. Northvolt has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the US. Remember, they're the Swedish firm that BMW recently pulled their $2 billion worth contract from. The CEO has had to resign, Peter Carlson, who's been there from the beginning, and they are hoping that this restructuring will allow them to continue as a viable operation.
Scania, if we're going to be all good and Swedish about it, one of the shareholders and its biggest customer said it was loaning $100 million to Northvolt to support manufacturing at Skellefteå in northern Skellefteå. Oh, there's an E with a circle above it. In northern Sweden. Volkswagen had 21% stake in Northvolt as well. It's its main shareholder. It said it had taken note of the filing and was in close contact with the Swedish firm, declined to comment on any repercussions on its own business. An analyst from Handelsbanken, one of the Swedish banks, was saying that this filing would give the company some short-term breathing space, but says they tell them that they haven't found investors and raised the capital needed to restructure the business. So we shall see what happens from this Chapter 11. I hope something good comes out of it, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
I mean, if not, there's going to be a bunch of empty battery plants, and that seems a terrible, terrible waste.
Well, Europe was supposed to be going to be this wonderful battery-centric building place, and you've got companies delaying, you've got companies actually stopping, and then you've got companies going seemingly into serious financial trouble. Mm-hmm. It's not looking good, and just reinforces the dominance that the Chinese have in this.
Again, a lot of this, I think, is product being forced on people who aren't ready for them yet, psychologically ready for them. And so everybody's going, we can do all this, but customers just not being in a position to need, want, desire to change.
Yeah.
No matter how good the companies are, they can't drag people into their showroom.
No.
That brings us to a Guilt Minute. Quick break in the show where we ask for a tad of financial support to keep the lights on and the hosting running. If you feel the Poetry Podcast is worth a small consideration every month, then you can become a patron. Different levels of patron include different levels of commitment from us to you, including being able to watch the show recorded live. We also have a small range of merchandise in our spring store, from stickers to mugs and t-shirts. If you don't have any spare cash, and we do completely understand, then you can help us by following for free from a podcast player to receive every show as they're released, and by liking and rating the show in whatever way your podcast supplier lets you. If you've done all of that, some of you do, so thank you very much, then the last thing you can do is to recommend us to your friends or colleagues.
Thank you, everyone that does.
It was a super quick minute today, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, the first part of the show was not quick. I've just seen. I didn't realize how long we've taken.
Some of you will have had a very leisurely time at the gym this week.
We could almost go twice.
Yeah. So first up, Hyundai at the Los Angeles Motor Show. The headline unveiling was a new Hyundai Ioniq, and it's the Ioniq 9. It's a really quite large, or slightly too big for Europe, electric SUV. Well, it's an MPV pretending to be an SUV, with a 385-mile range. It is going to be sold globally, despite the size, but it's thought to be approaching about £80,000 price-wise, according to Autocar.
At the top end, yeah.
At the top end. It looks like a Volvo. It looks like an Ioniq 5 and a Volvo V70 had a small dalliance at the back of the motor show, and this, 9 months later, was the result, which is not unpleasant. It does seem to have about 3 levels of wheel arch eyebrow, but other than that...
Definitely at the front.
Yeah, there was a skip. Somebody's stylus slipped or something. But other than that, it is a pretty handsome looking thing.
I think it's one of the least remarkable Ioniqs they've made, to be fair.
For that market segment, it should be spot on. I mean, it looks a lot like, goodness, I can't remember his name, Peter. It's got those shoulders like a Volvo V70. I'm so sorry, everyone. But it looks like a classic Volvo estate, especially in that, and in the roofline, and the back end. You'd almost think it was a Volvo. I think that that's going to be a very attractive look to potential buyers. Inside, which of course is the most important part of any of vehicles like this, the idea is that it's as spacious as possible, that it's a natural lounge, which represents a feminist, relaxing and caring space, majoring on airiness and functionality, which is kind of cool. Hyundai's quite good at that. The Ioniq 5, I think, was one of the first places where I definitely experienced that kind of thing. If you go for the fancier specs and you go opt for the 6-seater instead of the 7-seater, then the 2 captain's chairs in the middle will have integral seatbelts and can spin around. You can have picnics and games and all sorts of fun things in the back. This is why I'm saying it is essentially an MPV pretending to be an SUV. Rear seats, somebody commented that they were kind of tight for them and they were 6'2". Should mean them. Plenty good for kids. I noticed from the press I don't know if they're press pictures or not, pictures here in Autocar, that there's room for 2 Isofix kiddie seats. Even in the very back row has Isofix. The middle row seems to have Isofix as well. So you can have at least 4 kiddie seats and booster seats and everything all in the back. People in the very back might need it because the window line does cut up really quite sharply. Definitely boosters in the back for the little ones. But I think it's kind of cool. I think that's going to be a pretty popular vehicle in many parts of North America, definitely around the northern coasts. Oh, last but not least, one pet hate of Andrew's is that when you have a 7-seater vehicle, and only a tiny little bit of space in the boot space in the back. Well, don't worry, because it has one of the largest fruits of any EV that's going to be sold in the UK, up to 88 litres of space underneath the bonnet, 52 litres in the all-wheel drive versions.
Okay. Right, I'm going to take us on to DS then. And DS have shown us sort of, under quite heavy camo, the DS8, which is a fastback, and apparently will offer a range of up to 466 miles. Apparently this has been done via the official WLTP testing as well. They have been able to do this with the help of not only the battery technology, but also active aero. Things such as there are active air intakes in the front bumper. It looks, I know we're seeing this picture and it's got camo on it and there's nothing really to give a scale, but it does look like it's a bit like the Peugeot that I can't remember, that they would get very cross about if you called it an SUV, because it wasn't an SUV, it was a fastbacky car-y thing, but it's got a...
Trouble is that nobody cares because nobody bought the darn thing.
Yeah, and they're not going to buy this because it's a luxury French car.
Sorry, there's nobody... This is purely something for French government ministers to be driven around in. Nobody's going to buy it. Nobody really cares.
But what about the drag coefficient that they're so proud of, Alan?
It will be wonderful for getting French politicians across Paris. Yes, that will make the world of difference. French cabinet ministers will be delighting in the drag coefficient. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. It is a pointless car.
Well, do you want to talk about a French car that people will buy? Yes,
the new Renault 5 EV. It is going to start in the UK. With a £22,995 price. That undercuts many key rivals, specifically from Stellantis, which is, of course, always the key rival. That just under £23,000 will get you an entry-level 118 brake horsepower car, which is plenty. 40 kilowatt-hour battery, 190 miles of range out of that. If you're doing suburban trotting around, that is quite a bit. That price includes 18-inch alloy wheels, 7-inch digital gauge cluster, wireless phone mirroring, rear parking sensors, LED lights. What you really want, though, is the Techno trim, which is £2,000 more. And that means you get a larger driver display, adaptive cruise control, wireless phone charger, and the only thing that matters out of this, the bonnet-mounted charge level indicator, where it glows 5.
But you don't get more range, I don't think.
I think you can probably select. I haven't played with the configurator for this.
No, because I'm just looking at the Autocar article that we have linked in the show notes. You have to go up to 27,000.
It's 27,000 for the 148 brake horsepower with 52 kilowatt hours and 248 miles of range. That's available on the Techno or Iconic trims. If you go for Iconic, you get heaty front seats and steering wheel, lane keeping, adaptive cruise, parking assistance. And that's still coming at smidgen under 29,000. But of course, by that point, you'll be choosing nice colours and all sorts of fun stuff like that, and it'll be a little bit higher. But it's still pretty decent pricing there, and it looks great.
Mm. What I would recommend, it's just occurred to me now, is if everybody checks out the latest edition of the Looking Out the podcast, because they talk about Renault amongst other things, and the confusion with Renault's appearance, or what they gave everybody to look at the Paris Motor Show, particularly as they appear to be having models that are competing with themselves for the same market. So that's a really interesting listen/watch. They're on podcasts players, but they're also on YouTube. So do check that out.
Yeah, Renault and Stellantis seem to be doing that a lot right at the minute.
Yeah. It's a really interesting conversation.
Mm-hmm. Points of interest, though.
Yep. Points of interest, and we have a lunchtime read from Haggerty. Quite a decent read, actually. 8 minutes, it says here at the top of the article, and it is titled "How the BMW E36 3 Series Came to Be from the Man Who Was There." I did not know most of the story, obviously.
No, me neither.
But it's fascinating to read it and find out what went on, because massive shoes to fill in 1990, 91. To replace the E30, which is obviously a darling to many of us of a certain age. When we look back,
I've raised my hand here. I've raised my hand because we had E30. The first E30 was in Saudi Arabia, and then subsequently my dad worked for a BMW dealership, and they changed on a 3-month basis.
God, that dashboard doesn't look so clean.
Doesn't or does?
Doesn't it look so clean?
Absolutely, some of the best dashboards are from German cars are up to and around this era. Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, do click the link in the show notes because it is a good one. List of the week, Alan.
List of the week. It's always fun trying to find lists of the week.
It's not just a list. It's lists of lists.
It is lists of lists. It is also very US centric. My apologies for that, but tough. And it is the longest lasting cars, trucks, and SUVs to reach 250,000 miles and beyond. These 30 vehicles have a 36% chance of reaching 250,000 miles, which seems quite ridiculous, really, in Europe, where we don't just rack up miles the same way.
That's what I was going to say, is I think this is highlights the difference that the US is as a market. We've become increasingly aware of how long the finance is starting to go for people to buy a new car.
Crazy.
You're talking six years plus.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you are doing and America is a very much a car-centric society, so therefore the chances of you racking up miles is much higher anyway.
We have a list of 30 vehicles here. Top of the list, I think I can do this week. Top of the list is the Toyota Tundra pickup truck, which has a 36.6% chance of lasting over 250,000 miles. And that's 4.2 times more likely than any other vehicle. Overall, there's an 8.6% chance that any vehicle you buy in North America can manage 250,000 miles. Of course, that varies wildly from vehicle to vehicle. In case anybody cares, the Lexus GX comes in at number 9 with a 20.7% chance of lasting 250,000 miles, which was something I kind of noticed when I was shopping around and I was looking at the forums and the Facebook groups, and everyone's going, well, this is terrible. I'm having to replace these airbags and this kind of thing. This shouldn't be happening. And then I realized they were at 225,000 miles and they were complaining that the consumable was failing. And it was like, I think that's probably going to be okay. My mum was giving me a lecture yesterday. She was feeling pretty chirpy yesterday. And I was getting a lecture about, well, I don't understand why you're bringing that car with you. I mean, it wasn't even new when you bought it. It's not going to last forever, And at that point, I thought, no, just the Lexus GX and Toyota Land Cruiser, those well-known vehicles for mechanical failings.
It's all right, Mum. It'll see me out.
Yeah, well, that's basically it. Andrew, any particular surprises for you? Any particular surprises on the list? For me, very few.
Probably the real surprise for me, and I'll just leave it at this. People need to check out the list, but for me is the lack of Nissans.
Yes,
and I know we were talking about this beforehand. Considering where they were once, I think this is quite a damning indictment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are many GMCs and Chevrolets, and even a couple of Fords above them in the listing here. There are separate lists, by the way, for heavy-duty pickup trucks, lists by brand, and all sorts of stuff. So there are about 6 lists for your delectation in there. And what's quite nice is if you don't know what something is, you can click on it and it'll take you to lists of them and stuff. So that if you don't know your way around the US vehicular choices, you can choose them. The other one that stood out for me, by the way, was Mazda CX-9 as a slightly surprising one there. One thing that's worth mentioning, by the way, often shorter service periods in the US. On the Lexus, for example, it's 5,000-mile oil changes as opposed to 10 or 15,000 in Europe. So that may well have an impact on how long engines and stuff will last.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to take us to the and finally, and Alan has managed to find probably the quintessential and finally. Honestly, this is from the Autopian, and I'm going to read the headline. Apparently dressing up like a bear and trashing a Rolls-Royce for insurance money is a crime now. So you get an idea of the tone of this, and you understand.
As soon as you see it's a Jason Torchinsky article on something ridiculous, you can pretty much guess what the rest of the tone is going to be.
Yes, it is a mad story of serial claimers of insurance due to bear attacks have apparently come a cropper on the 3rd time of trying this, that the insurance company's gone not so sure, and they've brought in experts to double check, and they believe that one of the claimants was dressed up in a bear suit and used garden tools to do the damage.
It's just a mad story of how you would ever think that would ever work. But yeah, it's definitely worth a few minutes of your time on that one. That's us for this week. There wasn't a special edition last Friday. There have been a couple of weeks before. I don't think we've quite worked out what we're doing over Christmas yet. Probably just going to go quiet. Andrew's busy. I am busy. And I'll be probably busy into the very start of January as well. Just trying to return to the UK, really. So yeah, we'll work that one out, and once we know properly, we'll let you know. So that's us for this week, but don't forget that between now and next week, you can give us any feedback, share your thoughts with the show at motoringpodcast.com on Blue Sky, Motoring Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and on the contact page of motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Remember, you can support us financially via Patreon. Please leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. Andrew, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is if you search for Crack Windscreen on Mastodon or Blue Sky, you'll find me there. And I'm also on LinkedIn under my name. And Alan, if people would like to get in touch with you personally, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way for me is with Blue Sky, where I'm at AJP Bradley. That's BRADLEY. You will get upset if I don't do that. We'll be back very soon. But until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
And safe motoring.